Welcome to the video demonstration for the second lab in the FortiAnalyzer course, Administrative Domains. My name is Bob Cunningham. I'm an instructor with Fortinet. In this video, we're going to look at configuring administrative domains and administrator authentication. I did not mention in the last lab, but should have, that we are following right along, taking the path laid out in the FortiAnalyzer 6.4 lab guide. So if you'd like to pick up at page 37, we'll start right there. I won't announce page by page, but you'll be able to follow the activities as we go through the lab step by step. So we're going to start off by logging in to our FortiAnalyzer. Administrator name admin, password is password. Now we're going to look at the system settings tile. Now there's several widgets here, several separate blocks, one of which is called system information. And at the bottom of this, we want to turn on something called administrative domains. Now, an administrative domain, or ADOM, is a way to break up the equipment you're managing into subsets. There's a whole bunch of reasons why you might use this, but one of the most common ones is I want to restrict and say this network administrator, this firewall admin can access these 3 boxes, but not these 9. Maybe they're the boxes that relate to his or her job duty. Maybe it's geographic, regional, but for whatever reason I want to break things up. So the first step to breaking things up like that, I need to turn on administrative domains. Are you sure you want to do this? Yes, that's why I just clicked it. Now it pushes me back out again, and I have to log back in. So once more, admin, password, and now I have a choice. There are 2 different administrative domains that we have configured. One that's called the root, and one that's for the security fabric. As we'll see later on, you can have different kinds of administrative domains, and they're largely organized by equipment type. But we're going to choose the root right now. I'll maybe get a chance to talk about the fabric domain in a few moments. Now I'm back in the same tiles, but now I'm in the root domain, administrative domain. Under system settings, there's an option over here under system settings. This is all ADOMs. And what this is going to list for me are all the different kinds of ADOMs that FortiAnalyzer supports. So, and for the most part, if you have a piece of equipment that's being managed, or that's sending its logs out to FortiAnalyzer, the ADOM type has to be the same as the equipment. So FortiMail would have to go in a FortiMail ADOM. FortiSandbox would have to go in a FortiSandbox ADOM. The one exception to that is the Fabric ADOM that lets you put any device in there as part of the security fabric. Okay, so if you wanted to see the same option here in the via the CLI, you could type diagnose. DVM is the device management. It's the database of all the devices. ADOM list. And you see here the different ADOMs listed here via the CLI as well. Let's go ahead and close that. Now we're going to create a couple of ADOMs, 2 of them. I'll start with this first one, create new, give it a name, of ADOM1. The type is going to be fabric, meaning any device in the security fabric can be managed by this ADOM. We could select device, but you look over here, we see there's nothing here. In the next module, or the next lab, we're going to go ahead and create or associate some devices, pull in some devices to receive logs from. So we don't add any devices in here to receive logs from, but we do want to set a maximum size. Right now it's set to 18 gig. That's all of our disk space. That's what happens by default. We don't want to use all of our disk space, so let's use a 1 gig, 1000 meg, and let's click OK. It's going to create that ADOM. Takes it a moment to go ahead and create that. Now let's create another one called ADOM2. Not 12, 2. And instead of being a security fabric ADOM, this is going to be a FortiGate ADOM, just for firewalls. But also we're going to change the amount of disk space here from, in this case, 17 gig back down to 1 gig of storage for logs. And now we have two ADOMs that we've created. We have our ADOM1, which is a fabric ADOM, and ADOM2, which is a FortiGate ADOM. In the next lab, we'll talk about device registration, but before we created our ADOM2, or ADOM1 for that matter, all FortiGates are automatically registered to the root ADOM, which may not be desirable, as I mentioned a few moments ago. You can switch between ADOMs without logging out by coming up here and choosing now I'll be in the ADOM1, or I'll be in ADOM2, or I'll switch back to the root, because that's how clever I am. I can move back and forth between them just by coming up here and selecting the ADOM of my choice. Next, we're going to look at authenticating administrators to an external server. For this exercise, we're going to be using an LDAP server. Your lab guide displays the structure of the LDAP server we're using, with the distinguished name, the organizational unit of training, the employees in the container AD users, and the LDAP bind account. With that background, let's switch over to our FortiAnalyzer again. We're in the root administrative domain. Let's click on System Settings. Let's go to Admin, Remote Authentication Server, Create New, LDAP Server, and configure the following fields. External server 10.0.1.150 is the IP address we're given. The port will stay the same. We'll change the common name identifier to user ID, UID. We'll choose the distinguished name, U equals training, capital, comma, the domain controller equals training, capital AD, and these are case sensitive. DC equals training followed by DC equals lab. All lowercase. The bind type we're going to choose will be regular. the user distinguished name, UID equals FAS. FAS is the abbreviation of FortiAnalyzer. FAS admin, comma, OU equals training, capital T, comma, DC equals training with a capital AD, DC equals, DC equals training, followed by DC equals lab. Password is training with a capital T followed by an exclamation point, so that's training, bang, TRAING, capital, or followed by an exclamation point. Let's look at that to make sure we didn't fat finger it, and we did, so that's a good reason to look at it. Training, there we go. And under advanced options, nothing. Let's go up here and check to make sure we can. And we connected, so everything's looking good. Now we want to create an administrator, but a special kind of administrator called a wildcard administrator. And this is one account that if you point it to a particular group, say there are 10 people in that group, all 10 individuals can use the same account to authenticate into our server. So we'll go to admin administrators now, and we'll create a new one. We'll give it the name remote -admins, plural, because this will be used for multiple individuals. And the admin type will be, instead of local, will be LDAP. And the LDAP server is the one we just made, external server. And we want to match all users on the remote server. Now watch what happens down here when we do that. What we previously had here was a password for this user, but what this is telling us is we're going to use the passwords that are on the LDAP server, and the administrator domain could be all domains, but we're not going to do that. All domains except for specified ones, we're not going to choose that. We're going to specify a domain, and we're going to add in here the domain of ADOM1. Click OK. And we're ready to click OK. And log out of our FortiAnalyzer. We're going to test our configuration by attempting to log in as two different users, AD user 1 and AD user 2. You'll remember that when we configured our LDAP server, we defined the organizational unit training, and that underneath that OU training were two users, AD user 1 and AD user 2. So both of those accounts should work now with our wildcard authentication. So let's start with AD user 1. That put a bonus letter in there. Let's take that out. And our password is training, exclamation point. Let's log in. And let's try retyping the password. It should be and this time we're successful. So we're going to log out and try logging in as AD user 2. Same password. And we're successful here as well. Now there is another account on that server, but it's not part of the OU training. So we're going to try to log in with the admin account here and see what happens. AD admin is the name of the account. And the password is training exclamation point. And it failed, as it should, because we only configured this server for the OU of training, not for the container of users. And that brings us to the end of this module. Hope you've learned something, and I hope you join us for lab number 3, where we will talk about device registration and communication. See you then.